Now let's bring in national champion, the early leader in TUDS through 2 games, an electric young wide receiver who we told you to draft in every single fantasy league, and the pride of the Pacific Northwest from the 253, Emeka Egbuka. Emeka, an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So, final drive of the game, Monday Night Football. You need a touchdown. The game's on the line. What's Baker like? What's the huddle like? Is it actually tense?
This is back-to-back weeks now, having game-winning drives, which is really exciting. But in the NFL, that's what it comes down to. It's a lot of one-score games, and you need leaders and people who are able to make plays in that moment. And Baker's exactly the type of guy you want at the helm of your offense when that's happening. So, we know what we got to do. Defense is playing their tail off, and we haven't been holding up our end of the deal all Monday night. So we knew we needed to come in clutch in the 2 minute, and we were just able to get it done.
How would you evaluate your first 2 weeks? I know you're a tough critic on yourself. What do you feel like you need to improve on?
It's hard to just point at one thing. You watch film, and like you said, I'm a very tough critic of myself, and you want to be perfect any given Sunday. So, that's the reason we watch film, and that's the reason we practice, because we want to be perfect on Sundays. And obviously, perfection is never going to show up on the field, but you want to get as close to it as possible. So there's a lot of things in the areas I want to grow in, but I'm just really grateful to my coaches and my teammates for trusting me in the role that I'm in currently, and just trying my best to be able to produce.
Your college wide receivers coach, Brian Hartline, one of the things he told me before the draft, Emeka, was he thought you were probably the smartest and toughest player he'd ever coached. Where did that come from for you?
I've been given a God-given passion for this game. I love it down to my core. I eat, sleep, and breathe football most of the time. So, it just comes down to the love of the game for me. And, the football IQ and all that just comes from, studying it and watching route running, and, not because I have to, but because, I'm obsessed with the game of football ever since a young age. So I've always been studying routes and defenses, and literally, like, my favorite part of the day is the film room. Like, that's one of my favorite
Really?
parts of the day. Yeah, like, so I've considered, going into coaching and stuff afterwards. I don't know what that door looks like, that path looks like for me, after my career is done. But, I'm very passionate about this game.
You would actually want to be a coach. That's pretty cool.
I've thought about it for sure.
Is that how much of that is love of the game, and how much of it is you love as a teammate, you love working with other people?
Yeah, I think that, I've had so many influential coaches over the course of my life, and I just know the impact they've made on me when I was young, and impressionable. Being able to talk to, young athletes who want to go on the path that I've been on myself, and give them advice and tips and pointers. I think, making an impact in that way is instrumental in, the success of others. Because I credit a lot to who I am now, to the people who've helped bring me up.
Is it safe to say Ohio State's the real WRU?
You can make an argument. I think, I can't discredit anything that anybody else has done, but
Yeah.
we have a lot of players who are doing it at a very high level, obviously. But I think it's pretty clear cut between us and LSU.
Yeah.
It's an argument that could go both ways. I think LSU is doing a phenomenal job in the league as of right now. They got Malik Neighbors, they got Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase,
Brian Thomas. Yeah.
Brian Thomas, exactly. So they got a ton of dudes who have had big years over the last couple of years. So, and then Ohio State, obviously, we keep pumping them out, first round receivers year after year. So I know just the competitive nature of me and all the other teammates that I've had at Ohio State. We want to make it as clear cut as possible. So we're going to push for that.
How about Emeka Egbuka's top 5 all-time Buckeye receivers?
Top 5 Buckeye receivers. All right. So you're going to have to go Chris Carter. I'll put Marvin there,
Yeah.
because, he's top 4 Heisman candidate, and I played with him. So maybe a little bias there. You got Ted Ginn.
Love Ted
Speedster.
Ginn.
Take the top off. So he was really fun to watch. There's another spot up there between David Boston and Michael Jenkins. So those two,
Yeah.
I'm not going to give them both the spot, but one of those two. And then the third one I would give to Chris Olave, leader in receiving touchdowns.
Not Emeka Egbuka.
Nah, I mean, I try to, leader in receptions, all that, but um, I played with some super talented guys, and if they have their own list and they want to put me in there, that's cool. But I'd like to have them in mind.
Where do you think, when it's all said and done, Jeremiah Smith will end up in terms of the Buckeye greats?
Yeah, I think he has a real shot at being number one. There's an interview a little while ago with Chris and Garrett, and they were talking about Jackson and how special he was going to be at Ohio State. And it's just something about passing the torch down to the next guy, and they're the real deal. It just gets you excited, and that's kind of what Chris and Garrett were feeling about Jackson. And then he ended up having 1,600 yards, had 347 yards in the Rose Bowl, like backed up everything that the older dudes were saying. So what I'm saying about Jeremiah, I think is going to hold true. He's a one of a kind specimen. Haven't ran into too many like him. I've never really seen Julio Jones or Calvin Johnson play in person, but I can only imagine it was very similar to this. Um, Super gifted kid, talented, and what ties it all together is his work ethic. He's all in bottom with football. There's nothing else on his mind at any given time. He's
Wow.
laser focused, and he's a bright future.
I think what shocked me is how big he was. I didn't realize you mentioned the Julio comp. That was my comp.
Yeah,
You mentioned he's all in with football. It's one thing to be super talented, but to have that kind of drive is pretty special. It's probably, I imagine, what's created a lot of success for you.
yeah, absolutely.
I would transition to say, when did you realize that you were in love with football? Like, when for you was there a moment that you said, "This is what I want to do with my life"?
It was really my first touchdown ever, second grade. I was like, dang, this is pretty amazing. Like my first time, in the end zone and everything like that. Obviously, I felt that way with every sport I was playing. I loved basketball. I loved baseball. I wanted to do all three professionally if I could. But football. I started getting a lot of national recognition by the time I was in eighth grade, and I was doing national tournaments and stuff like that, and I was performing at a really high level on the biggest stages, and that's when I kind of knew that this was something I could seriously pursue. So, um, coming from Steilacoom, Pacific Northwest, small town, not too much competition. You don't really have a good grasp of how good you actually are. So for me, it was kind of getting on that national stage and still not missing a beat when it came to my performance and all that type of stuff. And I was like, okay, I think I could do this.
Winning a natty or winning a Super Bowl?
I guess we'll have to see. Check back in a couple of years. Check back in a
Exactly.
couple of years, and I'll be able to give you an answer on that.
Where do you keep the ring? Is there a special place for it?
I don't have a special place yet. I'm gonna make a whole little
Yeah.
display and everything like that. Just haven't had the time to be able to install that and everything, but I do plan on having a nice little display. I got my jersey, I got my helmet, got the 205th reception ball, all that. So
Yes.
yeah.
What about for you? Is there a player that you would love to swap jerseys with? Who do you want after a game? Is there someone you look at and you say, I got to get that one?
I actually just did my first jersey swap on Monday with CJ. So that was the first one for me. That was really cool. But I think when it comes to the ones I'm excited for, it's really all my OSU teammates. So, we got Garrett next week, playing Garrett. We got Marv down the road. I get to see Chris 2 times a year. I'm seeing Jackson in Seattle. So I get to kind of play all my brothers who I played with, while I was at Ohio State, which is really cool for me, and that's really what I look forward to the most.
I love that you get to go back to Seattle your rookie year. That's
Yeah,
insane. That
yeah.
game's gonna be so fire.
Oh yeah, my mom already bought, a whole section out. She's selling it to all my friends and family and stuff. So I have probably more than 100 people there if I had to guess.
I was watching an interview with you, and you said that before you had really established yourself at Ohio State, that you were confused with C.J. Stroud,
It was CJ Jackson, like all
a
the
hybrid.
three of us kind of look similar. So I remember there was this one time we were going to the Rose Bowl. This is my freshman year, right before Jackson had that big game, and we went to Disneyland as a team. And apparently, people at Disneyland got wind that Ohio State was there, and I was walking around and I was getting called CJ and Jackson like left and right, like just we had similar hair,
Yeah.
similar everything. So yeah, no, that happened quite a bit my early years on at Ohio State.
Do you go with it or do you correct them?
I don't sign for CJ. I don't sign for Jackson. I say, hey, listen, that's not me. I wish it was. I wish I could make your dreams come true, but I'll try to. If I find them, I'll point them in your direction.
Studying the art of football, Emeka, being around Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Hall of Fame, all pro caliber players, what have you been able to take from that?
Honestly, just the high level conversation that they have, like just not even in the film room, in the locker room. Like we're constantly talking ball, and I gain a lot just from listening to Chris and Mike talk and Sterling Shepard, like all these guys who have tons of years in the league. I think Chris is going on, I want to say year 9 or something like that. Mike 12, Shep 12. So just listening to them talk about the game and route running and defenders leverages and stuff like that. I don't really say too much a lot of the time. I'm just listening to hear them talk, and I can always ask them questions of how they would run a certain route or what they would do versus this look. So there's just a wealth of knowledge I have access to, which is really cool for me being a football nerd and stuff like that. Just constantly learning and growing. And
now a lot of people are they asking Emeka for his autograph?
Yeah, I'm getting that more and more, especially Ohio's a hot spot for me in the Columbus area. There's a lot of people who recognize me there, and then Tampa's starting to get to that point as well.
We talked about Jeremiah Smith. On the other side of the ball is Caleb Downs. From everybody I've talked to, I've heard he's maybe the best safety prospect to come out since like an Earl Thomas, Eric Berry. They're talking about him in that category. What is it about Caleb Downs that you love so much?
Yeah, I mean, he's as advertised. Reminds me a lot of myself, honestly, just with his approach to the game, the cerebral approach to the game, the seriousness in his play style, and, just how much he loves it and how much he takes pride in his work, much like I do. So kind of right when he came in, you have big expectations. You're getting Caleb Downs as a transfer. You had a, All-American freshman year. You want to see what this guy's about. And, he exceeded all expectations. And, it made me better going against him in practice, being able to block him and stuff. But he's one of those special guys who kind of has a switch that he flips on game day. You try your best throughout the week as a defender not to kill your teammates and keep them up and make sure all the injuries are fine. But on Saturday in the shoe, I mean, he just turns into an absolute heat-seeking missile, like just sprinting straight downhill once he sees something. Super instinctive, amazing ball skills, leader. Normally, like in college football, they just made a change where you're allowed to have the comms in the player's headset. Exactly. So normally on offense, it's the quarterback. On defense, it's the Mike linebacker. Well, on our defense, it's actually Caleb. He's kind of running the show. He's doing everything, sending everybody up. So, he's kind of the heartbeat of our defense.
That's pretty rare for a safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about Ryan Day? Is there a comedic, funny side to him or a side that maybe the average fan hasn't seen?
Yeah, a little bit. I would say most of the time it's mostly serious. He definitely has his moments, and the team meetings are kind of where those show up. But those are more for the players only. The media's not really going to see that side of him. But I love Coach Day. He's taken some heat over the years. Just as I've been at Ohio State, our program and him specifically have taken a lot of heat, including his family and just everything he's done for us as players. He's such a player's coach, super genuine. Like you can go up to him and talk about anything, and he's a huge advocate for the players' health, physically, mentally, spiritually, everything. He want to make sure we're good in every aspect of life. So, just knowing how much the players mean to him is really why the program is so back behind him.
So we asked Daniel Jones, what's harder, baseball or football? And to my surprise, he actually said baseball. So I'd pose the same question to you, Emeka. As a standout center fielder, which sport is harder?
I would say offensively, baseball is more difficult.
Hitting.
Baseball, it's probably the hardest sport I've ever played, especially mentally. It gets your mind stronger, especially if you're going 0 for 3 on a day. It can really tear down your confidence, but that's what I like about it. It keeps you headstrong, and I'm able to track the ball way better in football because of my center field skills, and I'm able to, keep my head level when someone's talking trash on the football field. So
center field is not all that hard. I'll be honest. If you got the God-given ability like I have to be able to run and track baseballs in the outfield, and when I was playing, I had a good arm. I haven't thrown a baseball in a while, so I don't know how far I can
Yeah,
get it.
what's
But
your arm like?
I don't know. When I pitched, I threw in
85?
mid 80s and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it wasn't crazy. But you give me a crow hop and I can throw some guy out from center field. But defensively, I would say baseball is not as hard as football, but it is really hard to hit a fastball. I remember in high school we were playing against Fife, and
Five. Yep.
yeah, we were playing against Fife, and they had this pitcher committed to UW, and man, he was throwing gas. His breaking balls were breaking all the way across the plate, and I think I want to say like 1 for 3 on the day or something like that, and my hit was like I was late. I was late on it. And I just pushed it down the right field line, and it just ran, and I got like a triple, I think. But it was not a great hit. I just luckily just late blasted it down the line. But when you're not used to seeing that type of speed and you face it for the first time, it feels like nothing's more impossible.
What will we be saying as fans at the end of the year about Emeka Egbuka?
I mean, I don't know. There's so much season left. Every day I just wake up and try to get 1% better, try to do my job, whatever's asked of me, and hopefully just do my best to glorify God on the field. So I hope at the end of the season, no matter what the outcome is, that people can say that I played for the glory of God. I glorified Him on the field, and hopefully I did my job while I was at it. But I'm not a person who carries too many expectations with me week in and week out. I think if you do the work and you do the process and you're serious about your business, all the other stuff follows.
You're so even keeled. It's like I pick up on that after 15 minutes. You've always been like that, even as a kid.
I have. My friends and family tell me that a lot of the time. I'm not too much on a roller coaster. There's not really too much that can get me off balance. And I credit all of that to just my faith in the Lord and Him being my rock through everything. So there's not really too much that can shake me.
Emeka, I know you've given so much of your life to football, but I'm curious, what do you feel the game of football has given you back in return?
I mean, it's a really good question. I think that the unfortunate thing about sports is that they don't always love you back.
True.
I have tons of friends who show so much promise. One of my best friends of all time, his name's Cameron Babb, played wide receiver at Ohio State, has torn his ACL 5 times. And, he's way more athletic than I have ever been in my life. Like, this dude is a freak athlete, like would have been an amazing receiver in the NFL. And, football just never loved him back. So, it's tough that you can have that, end of the spectrum on football. And you can also have, the I wouldn't say the luck, but, a lot of the fortune go your way. So, but I think one thing that I have learned from it is just, perseverance and work ethic. And, there's going to be days where, you don't want to be there. You don't want to put in the work. And I think there's pushing through that develops your character, to a level that, most people don't get to see or most people don't have a chance of doing because, there's a different toll that football takes on your body.
How do you feel physically through 2 weeks?
Football soreness. I feel, healthy for the most part, but, you gotta, I got smacked a couple of times last night.
Yeah, I saw.
The Texans defense, they play really hard. They hit, and but you got to be ready to take that. I mean, this is football at the end of the day. So, brush it off, move on to the next play, get your body back for the next week.
I asked this question to A.J. Brown last week. I'll tell you what he said after you answer. I said, 200. Would you rather have 200 yards or 3 tuds?
I'm going with the 3 touchdowns.
That's what he said too.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, I love the yards, but the
touchdowns.
you can't replace those. They really add up.
Yeah, I'm going with the touchdowns. That's the name of the game. I want to win. I could have at the end of the day, I'm trying to win the game. Honestly, my stats don't matter, but if I have 3 touchdowns, I know there's points on the board. I could have 200 yards and we have 0 points at the end of the day. So I'm going for the victory.
Emeka, awesome interview, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. Absolute pleasure. Would love to stay connected and do this again. And more than anything, rooting for you and in your corner all the way.
Yeah, man, no doubt. I really appreciate you having me. This is really fun.